All right, Chris Kenny, what do you think was the key in this one? How did the Cowboys beat Seattle?
Well, it ain't complicated, Jenna. It starts with the run game, and that's both sides of the ball. I mean, defensively, the Dallas Cowboys defensive line did a good job of playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Those guys up front, DeMarcus Lawrence, Malik Collins, Tyrone Crawford, Antoine Woods, all of those guys had tackle for losses. So that tells you that those guys did a good job of disrupting the timing of the run game, a lot of stop and start by Chris Carson in the backfield, and it's hard to get the running game going. I think they finished with 70 yards rushing. On the season, they were averaging 160. So if you could slow that Seattle Seahawks offense down by stopping the run, I think that bodes well for you defensively in terms of trying to contain them and limit scoring opportunities. Offensively, you saw what Ezekiel Elliott did by halftime. 17 touches for 123 yards from scrimmage. I mean, they were running the offense through Ezekiel Elliott. And when it became winning time in the fourth quarter, we saw Dak Prescott step up and make some plays, particularly in the red zone. He had two critical runs in the red zone to set up those touchdowns. Of course, we know the one at the end of the game was aided by the two penalties to keep that drive going. You had a DPI by K.J. Wright, and you had a DPI by Coleman, and that allowed them to continue to move the sticks. And then, you know what? When they got into the scoring area, Dak Prescott was aggressive. He took advantage of the opportunity when it presented itself on that 3rd and 14. And ultimately, when your quarterback is making those types of plays and then your offensive and defensive lines are dominating the way the Cowboys did, you're going to have a good chance to win a playoff game.
Now, 2 of these 4 games were won not just because of the running game, but a small little point. Tavon Austin flipped the field a couple times. Those 74 yards that he had as a returner in the Baltimore game.
And he had one taken away. A touchdown that could have really changed it.
Yeah, so in these games that defenses were dominant, not like the beginning of the first few months of the NFL, we could see special teams, Tavon Austin, those extra yards to create that field position that Dallas could play. This connected game where they could depend on their special teams. They could depend on their defense. And when it was late, they could depend on their quarterback. And I just like the fact that everyone is not going to be a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees type quarterback. And I just have a great deal of respect for those quarterbacks who aren't those guys, but they develop a style for which they can win games. Ben Roethlisberger has done it at a high level. He's a totally different quarterback. He came into the league very one-dimensional. You couldn't depend on him. You had to play strong defense around him. He had a limited passing game. Now he's grown into one of the most prolific passers that we have. Dak Prescott, man, be who you're supposed to be. And in the biggest moments, 3rd down, 4th quarter, that's when you could see him running the football. So Scott Lanahan's buy-in, Jason Garrett in designing these quarterback runs that I thought 3rd and 14 here. This is not a 3rd and 14 play, but halfway through this, they had it blocked perfectly. Dak Prescott made up his mind to put his cleats in the ground and not just protect the football, but I'm going to be aggressive and try to go get this 1st down, which led to a touchdown. So for me, those were the differences in this game late. Because what am I expecting? I'm expecting Russell Wilson to make some kind of play with his arm or legs. Who makes this play? Dak Prescott makes it, and I believe that was the biggest play, not only of the weekend, but the biggest play of his career.
The biggest play of his career, and I said earlier, I'll say it again, it's the biggest play a Dallas Cowboy has made since Larry Brown intercepted Neil O'Donnell late in the 4th quarter of Super Bowl 30. Like, they've only had a couple of other playoff wins. You could argue the Romo had a touchdown pass to Terrence Williams in their most recent playoff win, but this was the biggest play. And can we show it again? Because look at who Dak runs through. That's the best middle linebacker in the NFL. That's Bobby Wagner, a guy who is on a Hall of Fame track, just made first-team All-Pro again, a guy who in his career in Seattle misses less than 1% of his tackles. And I don't know if this counts as a missed tackle, but it's close. And if Dak gets tackled there, if Wagner makes that play, they are kicking a field goal 100%. They're not going for it. They're kicking a field goal, and now we're thinking it's Russell Wilson time. It's down 6, even without the kicker, like whatever it is, down 6 with the ball outside of 2 minutes. Seattle had 1 timeout. Okay, let's go see what we can do. And that play by Dak changed the trajectory of the game and maybe changed the trajectory of this NFL season.
And as an NFL player, there are plays that happen, and they don't happen in real time for you. They happen in slow motion. And you have to make up your mind in that fraction of a second that I'm getting ready to make the more dangerous of these plays. And that's what Dak was able to do. Canty, you're agreeing with it because as a defensive player, there are certain times you have certain stunts and you see something and you believe it and you have to make that call. And that, to me, was a Dak who had made up his mind compared to some other times where he didn't run with that type of fervor that we saw him finish off that run with.
No, you're absolutely right, CC. It's a certain mentality that you're talking about, and I'll take it a step further. Sometimes it's not in the game. Sometimes you make up your mind to do that in the preparation in the week leading up.
Okay,
and you're thinking about it, and you're saying, you know what?
It's going to be one of
if
them
the
kind of
situation presents itself, I am going to react this way. And that's how you practice. That's how you prepare when you're going through your film study. So when you have those show up, you're prepared to execute in those moments, especially when you're talking about postseason football, because it's a different brand of football. It's more physical, it's more intense, and it was clear to me that Dak Prescott, unlike the other young quarterbacks that we saw this weekend, was prepared to make those plays and had the confidence to be able to do so. And that takes you back to what happened in Week 17 with the Dallas Cowboys and Jason Garrett's decision to play Dak Prescott.
Great point.
That's the dividend, right?
Okay.
That's exactly why Jason Garrett made the decision to have him in that game when he sat Ezekiel Elliott. Both of those moves
and that was
paid
a
off
risk
for
by
Jason Garrett.
Because if Dak plays poorly in that game without his all-pro offensive line, without his all-pro running back, he's going into these playoffs as low as you can confidence-wise. Instead, he came in off his best game of the season. Quickly, one note on why this win, the way they won it, was so important. Everything they did, I think they feel, is duplicable next week because they didn't get outlier performances. Yeah, Zeke was great. He's the best player on their team and the best running back, true runner of football in the NFL. Amari, he's the guy who had 100 yards receiving, not Blake Jarwin, not Cole Beasley.
Right.
Dak didn't make where he's threading the needle. No, Dak did enough. And they've been 25-1 in Dak's career when he doesn't turn the ball over. He did turn the ball over, and they won despite that, and the defense was spectacular. All those things, you look at, okay, we won a game being exactly who we are. That gives you enormous confidence when you're now going to be an underdog next week on the road.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.